It's a Friday night record and a Friday night release. If we wait any longer, United will probably have earmarked your seat for sale to a digital asset venture capital firm in the Cayman Islands. On this episode of Cream of Manchester, the latest round of relocation therapy, the club's decided another several hundred season ticket holders are an aesthetic mismatch for the main stand and must be forcibly decanted elsewhere. And if being evicted by your own club wasn't enough, the Home Office has decided that football fans are now a distinct subspecies of criminal. New laws mean that jibbing a game, a civil trespass at the Glyndebourne Opera, is now a specialised police matter. To the police and politicians, we're all just one bad VAR decision away from repeating the 2024 riot. So Carl is with us, and he's on the fans forum and knows all about this stuff. Last summer, you predicted a different type of atmosphere, very politely, around the dugouts. It's been really plain to see, hasn't it? It's been captured on TV among everything else. How much further are they taking it this summer?
So this summer, in total, it's going to be 1,100 people that have been moved. I think it was about 600 last year and about 600 this year. We've seen the impact that it's had so far. We've seen it on TV. We've seen all the TikTok videos of people coming right up to the pitch, putting, videos online of their sort of match day experience, filming every single possible minute of it, and we've seen how that will get replicated again across an even bigger section of the South Stand next season. We've had, obviously last season, people who were then made to move into other parts of the stadium. There's a bit of one of the many contradictions about all this is that United are saying that they want to provide more season tickets for cup season ticket holders, and there was a big drive to do that last year because they're not selling, they need to make the cup season tickets attractive because they know they're going to struggle to sell the midweek games once we get back into Europe. But they're moving people, they're decreasing the overall net number of season ticket holders by pushing those people into the rest of the stadium, bringing in those 600 hospitality seats, which is then taking 600 seats away from potential new season ticket holders. So it's a classic thing of, say one thing and the reality proves to be somewhat different.
Do they think it's a genuine financial necessity, and is it sensible long term, this, do you think?
They claim it's a genuine financial necessity. Really disingenuously, I feel they often trot out this thing of, if we increase hospitality across the stadium, that means that it keeps the general admission price lower for everyone else. And it's such a ridiculous, disingenuous thing to say when we've had 5% season ticket increases for the last 2 years, well above inflation. So they come up with this sort of, we know the way things are at the moment, everything's a financial driver, every little decision has a financial reason behind it, and it's about the impact on the bottom line at the end of the day. So yes, it is just a purely financially motivated reason, and sometimes I wish they'd just come out and say that rather than these disingenuous statements about trying to keep it cheap for everyone else while still putting the season ticket price up.
Will, give me another season ticket holder's perspective on this. To what extent does receiving a non-negotiable relocation notice constitute engagement? Do you feel engaged with?
I think it's a weird situation, really, because I know a lot of people from where I sit. We're a big family at this point, with the amount of people who've been going for so long. I mean, my granddad's been going since he was a kid, and a lot of the people around. There's a few older people. There's people in adulthood and people in youth, and I think everyone sort of has got to know each other now. And I know a lot of the older people who sit around us have said that if we were to move and if they were to be relocated, they'd just give up the ticket because they'd lose that sense of community that they go to the game with. And I think it's really important as well because loneliness happens with people across the country, and I think with football it's a good time for everyone to get together. You get to see people that you're familiar with and enjoy the football together, and I think that's one big thing with football's something that should be enjoyed together. I think by mixing groups up and splitting you away, sending you to another part of the stadium that you don't know people in, it just sort of ruins the experience for a lot of people.
Combined with the price rises, then, if that's a reason to stop going, and the price rise is a reason to stop going, tell me, Murph, about what that does to the general makeup of the crowd, because you see it firsthand, right? You've been outside selling the fanzines for as long as I can remember, so you get a good view, and having grown up in the area as well, you've seen it change over the decades, right?
Massively, massively. I mean, I'll go back to when I was selling swag flags and scarves and T-shirts on the street in the 1990s, and the crowd makeup at Old Trafford's changed dramatically over that period of time. And obviously, United were obviously trying to engage people from overseas and the corporate supporters and the hospitality supporters that Carly alluded to before. Since the 1990s, I was hearing these arguments in Red Issue 35 years ago, so I understand that. But the demographic around Old Trafford is massively different now. I'll give you an example of the T-shirts. We used to get T-shirts outside there with players on there commemorating cup wins or whatever else. Well, now the massive sell outside the ground is half and half scarves. Now, the most of the local support hate them. I don't like them either, but I also understand the reality of them. The vast majority of people that turn up outside there buying this material are from Ireland or from Norway or from America, Singapore, whatever else, and they're right into buying this particular stuff, and that's what United are enticing these people to the ground at the expense of local supporters, and they've been actively doing it for over 30 years. This was around about 30 years ago, and as in regards to selling a fanzine, the same thing applies. I I mean, there's always been a healthy support for United in Ireland and Scandinavia. I reckon it's gone up pro rata as the ground's got bigger over the past 25, 30 years. But the United are not that bothered about local engagement with supporters. It's so expensive now to get in the ground. You can't go spontaneously like you could when I was a kid. I appreciate that was many years ago. And I can't think of any groups of kids that jump on the bus and go to watch the match anymore. And United don't particularly want them there anyway. I wouldn't say they don't want them there, but they're not bothered about them being there.
Their bottom priority, and I think it's clear to anyone listening to this, think we're like bitching about overseas support or anything. It's absolutely not the case. You're not listening to four people who live by Old Trafford and they're therefore griping about anyone who doesn't. But it is definitely the case that people who live near and have grown up in the area feel like they're absolutely bottom of the pile, and there's a reason for that because we tend to spend less money right
No,
in the
absolutely not.
stadium and on match days.
I always celebrate the fact United, and still to this day celebrate the fact that United have a cross global appeal. I think it's a marvelous thing United have such a cross global appeal. And I remember in the 1980s, early 90s when United weren't that good, that it still enticed people from abroad. It was magnificent to see. This is not a gripe against people coming from Norway, Singapore, or Ireland or whatever coming to watch United. Bring it on. That's not what I'm getting at. But United are actively wanting these people to come there at the expense of local support. It's the problem with United, not with the people coming abroad to watch it.
Carly, what do you think it's going to take for them to realise this?
I think we're about to go into a really interesting period of what I am going to call manc washing. So I've noticed this trend at the moment where I think the club have cottoned on and realised, particularly after certain comments made by a certain minority stakeholder, that really pissed off a lot of local politicians, pissed off Andy Burnham, the leader of Trafford Council. I think they're starting to realise now, with this new stadium coming up, that they are not going to fill that 100,000 seater stadium all the time. They are not going to get the funding for that 100,000 seater stadium if they don't start trying to present themselves as a bit more Manchester focused. And I think over the next few months and years, because of all this stadium redevelopment and because they're trying to get all of the local politicians and local funders on board, we're going to see a big wave of the club trying to use more authentic Mancunian voices, and basically trying to, you know, Jim Ratcliffe said, put the Manchester back in Manchester United in a very cynical and transparent way. So we've already seen, you know, the Stone Roses type stuff and the nostalgia. I think there's going to be a continuation of that nostalgia wave, with the club trying to capitalise on the Manchester thing and really cynically trying to make itself sound more Mancunian. And we'll see it in the comms, we'll see it in, you know, fucking bullshit Adidas photo shoots outside the PEV and, you know, all that sort of stuff, and trying to be, you know, terrible poems in like really exaggerated Manchester accents and, you know, the sort of shite that I'm talking about. I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of this manc washing over the next few years, because they've cottoned on that they need to present themselves as a Manchester club to try and attract local people to take up this, these seats in this 100,000 seater stadium, get the public on board. They know they're going to meet a lot of local opposition to it potentially. They know that Trafford Council are almost going bust. It's in the news all the time, and Trafford Council, they're going to really have to sweeten them up to get investment in the local area. They're going to need to attract more investors. They've got to get Burnham and other people back on board. Are they pissed off with these immigration comments? So I think we're going to see a big move towards the club, from the club towards trying to rebuild I'm going to say the localized identity and not the local connection, because I don't think it will be an authentic attempt to engage local fans. I think it's going to be a very comms driven, very image driven, transparent attempt to reassert its Mancunian identity for an external audience, not the local people.
Well, that's what you would expect from any slick PR machine, but I think you're wrong, Carly, because as we know, we do things differently here. What a change that would be anyway from what we've seen of fans in the 70s and 80s being moved to the heights of North Stand Tier 3. So we might ask if the club's equality and inclusion policy is strictly limited to people who can climb 400 stairs. Anyway, if you're tired of being treated like an obstacle to profit, find our Substack. We've got a brilliant series coming up from Roy, who's been attending since the mid-1950s, and he's writing a definitive on all four sides of the ground. They've not all been completely ruined yet. And of course, subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit the like button and help us bypass the corporate algorithms. Second part of this is about second-class citizens. Now, to understand the scale of the discrimination that came in last weekend, let's look at this law. Here is how the UK government treats you, the matchgoer, compared to when you watch cricket or go to Glastonbury. The new unauthorised entry law states in simple terms that entering a football ground without a valid ticket, even attempting to, is now a specific criminal offence. So at a music festival, that usually means getting kicked out. At football, criminal record. And this is added to football being categorised in different terms from everything else when it comes to passing on tickets, standing up, brackets general, and consuming alcohol in sight, God forbid, of the pitch, fine absolutely any other circumstance. So Carly, a City fan last weekend, first person charged for tailgating under the new laws. The authorities have no choice, do they, but to treat us like subhuman scum because we all behave like that all the time.
The bad thing about this is that in the actual legislation, they have said not in the actual legislation, but in all the comms around it and all the stuff that the government have put out and on the official government website, this has come about directly because of thousands of ticketless hooligans forcing their way into Wembley in the Euro 2020 final. Now, if you watch the footage of people going into that game, I don't know if any of you have seen it, there's a small group of lads that have clearly come down from London clubs and tried to get in. But the vast majority of the people that you see going through the gates on the videos from the inside are local kids who during COVID were very clearly bored out of their brains. There's a big match going on, something is happening, and we can go down and try and sort of get in and have a bit of the action. There was a massive security failing by the Wembley security operation. They're paying people on minimum wage to do a major security job, and surprise, surprise, it's not worked. And people have just, faced with the slightest bit of hostility, the security staff just stood aside and went, not worth my £13.15 an hour or whatever, and just let people through. But you see it, there's local kids, there's teenage girls arm in arm, literally skipping through the open gates. And the government are still trying to convince people that it was thousands of ticketless hooligans and that we're all very, very naughty people who all need to be contained. But, as ever with these things, the reality and the justifications that are given just absolutely do not match. And we all know that it was a massive embarrassment for the FA and for Wembley in the run-up to hosting Euro 2028. And as with all of these laws that are just absolute knee-jerk reactionary laws, it's badly worded, it affects too many people, it intrudes into people's lives in a way that has absolutely no right to. And I think a lot of people are going to get caught out by it over the coming weeks and months because it's just so over the top. There were 4 arrests last week. There were 3 at Wembley. The first one, she said, was a lad from Oldham. There were 2 other arrests. And there was also one at Tottenham Stadium as well. And I don't think people realise the depths that the law goes to. So it's not just about, they've called it the tailgating law, but it's not just about doubling up as we know it or jibbing. but it's trying to get in using a press accreditation, trying to get in saying that you're a member of staff or that you're associated with the players, and just having a ticket that is not in your name, that you're not authorised to have. So if you get passed on a ticket by your mate and your name is not on that ticket, or it can't be traced back to you, that is now an arrestable offence with a potential 5-year ban. And I don't think people are going to realise how strict this law is, and I think we're going to see a lot of people getting caught out by it unfairly over the next couple of weeks and months.
Good, that'll teach them. Let's get the working class out of the game altogether. Will, what about you and all the other young people? Are you acting like a national security threat? Is jibbing quite common among young people? Are you still at it?
Well, I don't think that jibbing itself or tailgating is a massive problem among younger people, just because I think, especially at Old Trafford.
I never use the word problem, mate.
I just think with the big stadiums, and it's so hard for you to actually pull it off. I think people aren't stupid, and young people on the whole would know that the security will catch if you're trying to. It's not going to work. So I think that's not really the main problem for younger people. The main problem will be that using tickets in other people's name. That will be the biggest problem, I think, because a lot of younger people, if the dad can't go, the dad will go on my ticket, or if the dad's mate can't go, they might say, we go with your son. And I think that'll be the main problem, is that because to now get a ticket transferred to you, you have to have a membership, which is like £60. And I just think that, a lot of younger people won't be able to afford that. And that's where the big problem will be. When those tickets are being passed around, just from family, it could be family, friends, people that you know. But if you have to pay £60 just to go to one game so that they can transfer the ticket over, it's not possible for younger people for that to happen, especially from people who can't afford to get a ticket on its own, to then have to pay for a membership and then a transfer fee. I just think it's ridiculous that the handing of tickets without a different name is punishable on the same level as just entering the stadium without a ticket.
So Murphy, you go to loads of gigs as well as games, and you perform as a musician. If you're watching this in time, listening to this in time, Stretfest Saturday, you're on at what time?
8:15 at Head Bar.
There you go, 8:15 at Head Bar. There's your plug. So how do touts behave differently at these, at music and football? What changed, and when did it change?
Well, I would say the breaking point or the cut-off point was COVID. I mean, anybody knew what they were doing for gigs. I'll talk about gigs for a minute. It used to be really simple. Turn up at a gig, half an hour practically set off time, unless it was a massive gig where, like, let's say, for argument's sake, Liam Gallagher or Take That, or the Arctic Monkeys, who have always been popular. You could nearly always get a ticket below face value, a paper ticket. I've done it hundreds, if not thousands of times. Just turn up at the arena, half an hour before the gig starts, to get myself in for 20-25 quid for what could be a 70-80 quid ticket. The digitisation of this has completely loused it up. So this idea of stamping out the touts is a load of baloney. It's really stamps out people. The touts still work, but it's a lot harder for it to work, but it's still working. The same applies at the football. Now, I remember the 1994 Criminal Justice Act, which supposedly outlawed touting just the football matches. Everything else is fine, but just the football matches. But, since 1994, and despite an expose on, was it Panorama, a year later, which supposed to blew the lid of all the touts at Old Trafford, it still goes on. Now, even though it's been digitised, but it's a lot harder now to turn up and get a cheap ticket. So if anything, it's actually loused up people turning up late and getting a cheap ticket. And as the touts, well, who are the touts now? Is it the touts Southern Warwick Road, who've been there years doing it and living, or United now the touts? Because there's a bloody good question as to who actually are the touts nowadays. But you still see, I'm not going to say exactly where they are, but you still see the touts on Warwick Road. They're very easy to find if you know what you're looking for. So nothing's changed really. And Carly said before about the jibbing thing, where in theory about the extent of the law, and I understand Carly saying that, but the implementation of it I think will be completely different. In the same way, the touting law is virtually not implemented. It's virtually ignored nowadays. Thank you. You might get the occasional clampdown, but you get the jibbing thing at Old Trafford. I mean, you got minimum wage security staff at Old Trafford who probably haven't got the time or the inclination or the motivation to hold on to somebody for 15-20 minutes while the odd lot turn up. They'll just cart them out. That's what I reckon will happen in practice, but of course in theory. And the same goes to using somebody else's ticket in somebody else's name. Again, in theory, Carly's right. You can be done for it, but the reality is, at worst, you just get kicked out because, have you seen the backlog the police have got in the courts have got to process this thing? with that on top, I just think it's nothing more than a headline.
Great, I'll be jibbing your gig tomorrow then. Thanks very much. There we are. Football is nothing without the fans, and fans can do nothing but pay up, sit down and shut up. And what a good job then that United are so good the team doesn't need an atmosphere. Write to us, creamermanchester1878@gmail.com. Maybe you've been moved and can tell us how it's been, or you're about to be. Don't forget to subscribe to Cream of Manchester YouTube and Substack. Read all about Roy's Old Trafford before United decide that history is a non-performing asset. Mind the trams.